council for allowing us to present you with the preliminary FY 2025 budget. We believe it's a budget that will be pleasing to you, and it will also provide you with a direction as to where we want to go with the city of Sea Pleasant. So, I'm working on one end of the budget, working on the document, and of course our chief financial officer, we're working in tandem, so she's correcting a few of the things, but this is a preliminary budget with the expectation that we'll be able to get some feedback on you with regards to where we're going in that. So, I'll open it up for Betty. Open it here. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and start with, you have a paper copy here? Okay, then, thank you. For some reason I can't find it on my iPad here. I have it on my computer and it's open here. Well, as you see, we're moving forward with the budget. We are anticipating that there's going to be some things. This is very preliminary. We have not completed the actual revenues on here and also the actual expenditures. We'll be waiting more so for your recommendations and your final approval as we move forward to finalize the budget. So I'm going to move basically to the fact that we are estimated to have $12,693 in expenditures from last year, and estimating that there will be a slight budget decrease in the FY25 budget. The expenditures as totaled, we'll be able to provide you with some calculations later, but I would like to move to the operation aspect of the budget so that you all can have an opportunity to review it and to answer any questions with it. The first one that's up for consideration is the city council budget. In FY24, there was a budget of a total of $345.03. There's a recommended proposed budget for FY25, which is going to be $304,112. A slight decrease of 11.9%. The recommendation in this budget is that there is a proposed budget increase for salaries or for the stipends that the council do receive. We've also seen that there is a recommendation for professional development, so that's tends to remain where it is. Constituent services at $14,000, just to name a few. And there was a slight decrease from $10,000 in the FY24 budget to $5,000 for strategic planning. Council events, there's a slight, we're recommending a slight cut in council events only because we didn't really see a whole heck of a lot of council events that really mired up to the amount. However, the 10.5 seems to be a standard for the amount of events that we have with the city. So to be consistent with what you all have done in the past, we're just recommending at $10,500 for the council events. And of course, the capital outlay to remain the same at $1,500. So I'll open it up for any questions regarding the city council.
Thank you, Ms. Ojo. I do have to ask out of courtesy, Ms. Logan, do you want to say anything?
Actually, not at this time. I just received a copy of this draft budget late in the evening, so Ms. Ojo and I was going over some things that I noticed that will be corrected in the next edition, but not at this time.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any council members have any questions?
I don't have a question, I just have a statement.
Councilmember McCarthy?
I want us to be mindful as we go through the entire budget, that this is an election year, which means during this budget, there will be a new council. And so we can not necessarily look at patterns of the current council because there may be new people here.
Right,
So certain things, when we're talking about cutting or we're talking about strategic planning, I can't fathom why we would cut, strategic planning when there will be a new council.
okay,
So we, just things like that we have to
Right.
consider. And I know that probably wasn't the first thing on your mind while doing the budget, I'm sure. But something we should consider throughout the, the whole budget, that
Right.
there may be a different council, there may be a different mayor, you get what I mean?
Right.
So we need to
take into account,
take consideration
yeah.
and do
what's
well
going on
by
term.
the people who may come after us.
Oh, okay then. And so, there is an opportunity to make a change or to make that recommendation for change also. Okay,
Thank you, Councilmember McCarthy.
a good.
Any,
Thank you.
anyone else? Councilmember Bilbro.
Good evening. It's evening. What is the timeline for like the next draft of this before we can put in recommendations for the next draft?
This is the first draft of it.
Right.
And April 7th, it'll be presented to council, and I know it's going to be going to the April 13th. I believe April 13th is the timeline to get a final to you all so that it be presented to the public in its full format.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I yield.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Bilbro. Any other, Councilmember Love?
So, Joe, have you considered that some of us do pretty regular events, and that the prices of things have gone up, and I see you cut that, but we'll discuss it further, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a simple recommendation.
I
And
understand.
it's just really based on the actual expenditures. And so because there's a slight shortfall, we're just wanting to see if we could redirect funds that aren't expended in other directions. But again, this is a preliminary budget, and with some careful planning, we may be able to get closer to exactly how much it costs to really plan the events. And also, I took into consideration, some of the resources that we already have available for the council also, such as our facilities, the manpower, and the ability to use our space. So we would definitely be more than accommodating if you feel that this budget doesn't meet your needs. But I wouldn't necessarily look at it at the dollar value right now. We're just looking at what your actual spends are.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Ojo or Ms. Logan on this particular topic? I have one quick question. There are many jurisdictions around the country who are just going crazy because they didn't use their Joe Biden money, as we put it, properly. Are we in that particular situation?
No, we've been very careful in the way that we have spent our ARPA funds, and we've used them very conservatively. And there wasn't necessarily a designated earmark on most of the funding. The last word that we received regarding the funding, we did notify you of some restrictions that were a part of the ARPA funds. But as far as I know, we can say we are 100% accountable for all those funds.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. And that's it.
Okay.
They have
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, go
Yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
So we've actually had an opportunity to look at all of our things, and if you all want to have an opportunity to review this, that is fine. All of the departments have been impacted, but the city clerk is here. The recommended changes for the mayor, city administration, economic development, finance. Finance pretty straightforward because we did a lot of the budget amendment decisions there. So our budget didn't really change that much except for a couple of areas with regards to the Bank of America credit card and anything else that you may want to consider.
I think that's about it.
Oh, okay then. I did want to have you take a look at page 18 of the document, because this is aligned with some of the strategic models that I've been talking to you about with the Learning Seat Pleasant concept, which is the concept that really puts the organization culturally in the center of learning, building competency as an organization. And so one of the major changes that I made in this document is that I took all the professional development dollars and the training dollars and focused them directly in the Human Resources Department. And the focus for that is, it doesn't change who's doing the training, what level of training is happening. This does not apply to SPPD, by the way. It's only for administration. And the council, of course, is in your budget. But the purpose of us doing that is so that we can capture the training opportunities for all of our employees. We haven't been really able to capture them or actually build programs that are specific for each position here at the city of Seat Pleasant. So the learning organization concept, the Learning Seat Pleasant plan that I believe is important for us to have would be for us to have everything centralized in the Human Resources Department, where we're able to go, should you all agree for us to move forward with a contract, to be able to capture every single training experience and capture it to every job position here at the organization. So it means a couple of things for all of us. Number one, it means that we have mandatory training for all employees, including the Seat Pleasant Police Department, and I'm separating them only for a reason. They have general orders, so they have mandatory trainings. We'll be capturing them from them. So they'll still manage their own budget within training, but in terms of administration and all the other departments, the recommendation is that we have mandatory trainings for everyone in the organization, and then we focus on departmental trainings where each position will have specific trainings that they need to take so that they could build competencies in their departments.
And I would like to add something there, with regard to the Department of Finance. My position in particular, because I'm a certified public accountant, and so there are certain requirements that I have to have, which I don't know whether or not that entity be able to provide that training, which I doubt.
No.
But a lot of my training will come from professional organizations. So there will be some twists with regard to finance department.
Yeah, and that would be pretty much the same with every department. For example, environmental justice, they will have trainings that are coming either from OSHA, or they'll be doing safety classes, whatever classes that are commiserate to what they're doing. If it's forklifting classes, or if it's driving classes, it would come from that organization. The clerk, it would come from the Clerks Association. So every association, those classes will be identified for each position. And so we've gotten some samples from all over on some recommended classes for them, and that would be it. But the mandatory classes will be housed inside the organization, and our hopes are to have an onboarding process where those classes will either be scheduled for live or that they'll be scheduled for online. So this will all be housed in the Human Resources Department. Nothing changes for any of our department heads or any of the departments that are wanting to take a training or get their certification. It's just that when Betty goes for the certification courses that she's taken, it becomes a part of her training record. So, yeah.
Mayor Porter?
The additional arrangement with that, with reference to that, is it's almost like the budgeting for outcomes and so forth, but when you're looking at this as far as any tuition reimbursement, things of that nature, have you taken into account those particular programs within that realm? So continuing education for our staff. They want to further their education, further degrees. That should be something that should be in consideration too.
Yeah, everything would be considered, but we would be looking at courses primarily that would benefit them in the positions that they're in or in the position that is listed here. So for example, the city would not pay for, someone who may want to go to nursing school, because obviously we don't have, a nursing program here. Yeah, but we would make sure that the programs are here. But training is such an important aspect to any and everyone's career. It also protects the organization litigiously in terms of any time that we may have to go to court for something, or if an employee is looking to get promoted, we'll have a record of their courses, and we'll all be able to identify, do they have the competency to move forward in the organization, because they've gotten the proper training in addition to the work ethic that they've had. So it's just a different way of doing something, but we just want to make sure it's centralized in one location where all of our supervisors can look at it. Some of our administrative coordinators can coordinate those trainings for those employees.
One question I have, and I haven't talked to Ms. Ojo about this, since all of the training is being compiled into the Department of Human Resource, the question I have is whether or not Ms. Barber would need an assistant to help manage and track the training. I don't know whether or not that's built in. I was trying to look at that.
So, yeah, so the way the training is with the consultant would assist us with that. They would assist us with that, but every single department would have their mandatory. So if anyone was coming to the organization newly, this is more process-driven, anyone coming to the organization newly would have a listing of all the trainings that they're required to take. And so they would be coordinated through the administrative offices. Yes. So for example, in your department, if you had someone coming in new, they know exactly what courses they would need to take. And if we had those courses available online, whatever those courses are, they would just simply be coordinated, and then they would just work with HR so that they could track it. Do the
Councilmember,
expenditures on it.
yeah, Councilmember McCarthy?
So that means every professional development budget, with the exception of probably the council and SPPD, SPPD, yeah, has moved to HR,
They've moved to HR,
and that's that $125,000.
yes.
Okay, how is that split? Is it even? Some departments need more training than other departments. Are you gonna list out what each department is going to get, like where you provide an attachment with that? Or is it a free-for-all? If I decide I want $50,000 worth of training, can I get $50,000 worth of training?
So you will have some core courses that you would have to take for your position. Yeah, so you would have an idea of what those core courses are, and over the time, you would take those. Right now, currently, every department has a training budget, but that the budget was determined by the department heads. But what happened with that process is that we are not capturing those trainings. So if you're going to conferences, if you're going to events or any type of webinars, there was no way for us to capture those trainings.
I understand
Yeah.
the thought behind it, and I
Yeah.
think it's a great thought. What I'm asking is, is the number separated by department? Like, will each department have a certain amount of budgeted money set aside, or is it just a free-for-all with the $125,000?
It's $125 for the training and $125 for the professional development. And what I did is I just rolled up all the trainings that were there. For example, in EJD, there was a budget of $5,000. Yeah, so we added
So will they
more
still
money
have
to-
a budget of $5,000, or moving forward, if they want to take $15,000? Like, how will we determine how much money each department gets for their training?
Yeah, it's not based on department, it's based on the trainings that they're taking. It'll be based on the trainings. So it's not a departmental budget right now, it's an administration budget. So this is the budget right here. Everything is rolled up
So,
into this.
so for the departments that have things that are required of them, right? For instance, how Ms. Logan in finance has things that are required of her, right?
Yeah,
And I believe so does Mrs. Ball, things that are required of them. that's separate from the mandatory trainings that you're gonna
Yeah,
allot
there's,
for, right?
There's two lines. There's the professional development, which is 125,000. And then there is the staff training budget, which is 300,000. So there's two different types of trainings.
So two different type of trainings,
Yeah.
got it, but we're
Yeah.
not separating it by department, you can kinda just
It's
come
all,
in.
yeah, it's all rolled up into
Okay,
one.
I think we should maybe consider that.
Well, we had it separated before, but again, once we're separating them, you know, there's no way really to, we would have to think of a way to track them. So that would simply means that we would be missing the avenue to track the trainings formally as we move forward. So, I've done this in, yeah, in many organizations, and the 450,000 is quite a bit of money to cover the entire organization, doesn't even include, the police department.
Okay. Councilmember Bilbro, oh, thank you, Councilmember McCarthy. Councilmember Bilbro, then the mayor.
Okay. Hi, so I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said that there was the contractors that was going to help Ms. Barber with tracking everyone's training, correct?
Yeah, if you look at the RFP that I sent, the Learning Seat Pleasant RFP, that is going to be the task of the contractor to assist us in developing a process where we can flow all of those training into our organization so that we can have what you all may be familiar with called a learning management system.
Okay. Can that occur without funneling all the money into one pot?
Actually, not really. I mean, it could, but it would make the organization disjointed, you know, and, you know, just have, I mean, it would, you know, every department would have to, you know, provide information. It would just be hard to capture. If we're able to capture the trainings going into one department, that's the way most organizations do, then they're able to capture it.
Okay.
Yeah, so because that's gonna be the department that has the mandatory trainings, so we have to capture those trainings. So there are trainings that are gonna be for all of our laborers. That's gonna be very different from waste management, but it's also gonna be some that encompass all of the departments. SPPD, they are gonna be required to take the mandatory courses, which is going to be all of our EEO courses, our sexual harassment courses, and the Americans with Disabilities Act course. Those are going to be required of every employee and also the council members as well, to track those. So it has to be an official tracking system somewhere, and Human Resources is the place that it should be.
Okay, yeah, it's less of the staff training line item that I'm concerned with. I think that's a great idea, to have that under human resources. As someone who's working in human resources, like I know like that, everything needs to be funneled through them, right? It's more of the professional development course, the line item that I'm concerned about. And that's mainly because what is necessary for Mrs. Ball, if the contractors don't feel like, well, that's something that, you know, we should spend money on, I wouldn't want her to lose what she knows she needs to do. And then it's like, oh, well, find something cheaper, or find, you know, if this program is the one that provides the
Okay, so
best.
the contractors are not the trainers. I want to make that clear.
No,
Yeah.
so, I'm saying, because my original question was, are they going to
Oh, they're-
facilitate,
They
you
will be
know-
working with every single department to make a determination on developing the plan. They're not going to make the plan.
Okay.
So they'll work with the department heads, and so they'll work with Ms. Ball, and Ms. Ball will say, these are the courses that are mandatory for the city clerk position. We'll be going over to, EJD, we'll go to public engagement. Public engagement may say, I want them to have a marketing 101 class, or a constituent relation services class that's held at NLC. They'll make the determination. Every department will make the determination with the consultant. The consultant will not be the expert in there. They'll just assist us in coordinating a way so we have that on plan. Because if Ms. Ball leaves tomorrow, if Rick leaves tomorrow, then, you know, we want to make sure we have a plan in place, a succession plan, so we can pull people in, the qualified candidate in, so that they'll have the courses that they need to move forward. And these may be courses that eventually, as we grow as an organization, through the learning concept, that we develop in-house to meet our specific needs.
Okay, and has that kind of conversation happened yet? And I'm asking that because the figure 125 looks really flat, if that makes sense, right? Like it looks like it's right? And if those numbers might fluctuate a bit, I would say that it would probably be more beneficial to us to already have those conversations with the consultant. So we know that for Mrs. Ball, annually it might take $30,000. We know that for Ms. Barber, it might take 15, for Mr. Barber, you know. And so that way it might be 87.5 instead of 125, and we can, you see what I'm saying? So like, have those conversations at least begun?
Right, so this is a padded thing because I did look at everyone's professional development budget, what they have taken and what they possibly could take.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, in my mind, you know, what courses could you be taking that you're actually not taking advantage of? So remember, it's only a few of us that are really gonna fall under the professional development category.
Right.
Yeah, so it's only gonna be a few of us. Most of us are gonna fall in this organization under the staff training. Well, they'll be falling there as well. But it's a lofty number, but I think it's a good number for us to start with just based on the types of trainings that I have seen done now. My concern is, and the reason why we're going in this direction with training outside of finance, but you know, as a professional organization, is that we're not providing enough training for our employees so that they're safe, so that they understand, so they can build competency, so that they can grow in this organization. And we just want to make sure that they have the capabilities to do that.
Okay.
Again, we're not doing it with the police department because they have general orders, they have mandatory classes. They'll just provide us with a spreadsheet that let us know the classes that they took and who's involved, and they do that anyway. And they'll just be involved in all of the Seat Pleasant classes, which is our mandatory classes, which is our EEO and sexual harassment and ADA, and dignity and respect in the workplace.
Okay. I yield. Thank you.
Oh, and the ethics training, yes, which we do, by the way, have, especially with professional development, but we can build something down in the organization as well. But we do have an ethics clause, so we can provide, that's a good point. We can add ethics to it as well. Very good point.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Bilbro. Mayor Porter?
Because this is a new process, okay, which means there has to be an understanding of exactly how this is a new process that you're utilizing. So there has to be a detailed sort of understanding,
Absolutely.
okay, so that we know exactly how that process takes place.
Right.
That's how you can sort of put together when we're talking about a budgetary standpoint and whether or not we're going to up it, down it, whatever the case may be, modify it. If we have a full understanding of what it is that's actually taking place, that's going to be very helpful to this council to make their overall decision in the budget process. So again, it's a new process. Anytime you have a new process, you're gonna, you know, you're trying to see how it's gonna work, how effective it's gonna be. You have to make sure that people understand the process, okay, and moving forward.
Yeah, it's a culture shift for the organization. I get that, and that is the reason why we want to bring someone that fully focus on getting us where we need to be, because the majority of this is going to be process-driven, and this is also gonna take a lot of buy-in. And of course, we could theoretically get together and do this, but it would be more beneficial for the organization if we had someone that was fully focused on getting us where we need to be. And I'll discuss that in the RFP that I sent you earlier.
I say that, may I finish? I say that because we know that over the years, it's been proven to us that in departments that don't have sufficient help, which means if a party is removed, and to be able to take over that position, assume that position, as opposed to going to another department, pulling from that department, which means it takes away from that department in order for them to do things properly. That's been an inherent problem with us. You know, it doesn't keep the flow going properly. There's too much catch-up that's possible. So that's why I say that's a necessary thing in moving forward.
Absolutely. I'm a strong believer in succession planning, and that's one of the reasons why the trainings are so important to have in the organization, because when you come in to an organization, you may be the only one doing that job. You're having to build from scratch and learn the culture of the organization. This way, everyone has a plan when they come into the organization. They know what the level of expectations is from the city, and then they'll know what the levels of expectations are going to be from their department heads. It also holds every employee accountable, because if they've had the classes or if they've had the training, then we can make them accountable throughout their entire career here.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. Councilmember Love.
Ms. Ojo, what is your time frame on, from where you are now with the planning to this actually being in full force?
Okay, I believe that we can have something in full force within 180 days. Once we have the RFP on the street, get a contractor in, the plan would be 180 days.
180 days.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Love. Sojo, proceed if you have to.
Okay, then. Okay. Do you have anything else, Betty?
No, I was going to add that, with this training can also help improve cross-training. I'm a proponent that one person should not only have the expertise in doing what their duties, responsibility in finance, we cross-train. And so when you do have someone to lead that transition, then someone can easily fill in, and that reduces the learning curve. And so that possibility with this training program can improve the learning curve, particularly when you have changes in personnel.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially with the learning organization, and then it can even go beyond your intradepartmental. It could be interdepartmental, where you have someone that may be working in one class and they may be interested in doing something. Long-term goal would be to have people shadow in positions. They may be something that they desire to do. For example, we have one employee that has worked in EJD that has worked as a finance assistant before. So, we know that there are a lot of people that are doing jobs that may see opportunities to advance in this organization, and this is an opportunity for them to do it. So with the cross-training and job shadowing, those are long-term goals, but, those are goals that you can do when people are training and learning in an organization.
Councilmember McCarthy?
Another, I guess it's not a question, it's a statement. In going through the budget, not every, and I know it's a hybrid budget, right? It's not necessarily budgeting for outcomes, it's not necessarily line item, it's kind of a hybrid. Every category is not, does not have an explanation, right? Some of them has explanations and some of them don't. I think it would be a good practice for all of them to have explanations if we're going to do explanations, so that the budget is self-sufficient. Somebody can go online and see exactly what each item is used for.
Okay, we tried our best to do all of them, but we may have missed one or two. Okay. We'll go through it again
Some of
to
them
make sure.
are missing. Like, for instance, I'm looking at public engagement right here, and it only has a couple of things here, as opposed to and I know some of them are repetitive, right? But even still,
Yeah.
just copy and paste it to the next one.
Okay.
But I think it should be there.
Okay, we'll make sure that happens. That's an easy fix.
And to that point, since it is repetitive in some of those, I think because a lot of people who are looking at this budget, or who may look at this budget, aren't, politically savvy, right? So I think it might be prudent if you're not going to like repeat the same thing for each line, maybe give an example of what is, you know, used for public engagement, because, you know, this for public engagement is different for, you know, the police department versus, you know, EJD. So I think that might be helpful. And I know for myself, when I first got on here, I was looking at a budget, and I was like, I don't know what this means. I've never seen these words before. So that might be helpful for not only the constituents who are looking at it, but maybe even some new elected officials. who
Okay,
may be here.
I'll have the department heads look at them and add them to their budget line.
Cool.
Folks. Hi. Okay. This is our preliminary budget.
Okay.
We plan on making some modifications to it. Did you have any questions that you wanted to ask regarding?
Okay, go ahead. Councilmember Hicks.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, so you said this is the first draft, and we'll have the second draft by the 13th or by the 7th?
No, you'll have it by the end of the week.
Okay,
Uh-huh,
thank you.
yes.
Oh, sure.
Ms. Logan, you said you just received a copy of this draft this
I
evening?
just got it done at 4 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was on record and was clear. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of coordinating when you do the budget. You have to coordinate with every single department. And it's also a formatting game too, so, yeah, the
Councilmember,
formatting is unreal.
I was gonna mention the formatting. Can we make sure that we take a look at the formatting and make sure that's, you know, because some of they don't all look the same in every department, like it's not consistent. And it could just be how it's uploaded. Could be. Or I don't know, because you have a printed version, so
Could
yours
be.
probably looks different.
Well, yeah, when you look at it here, it should be all at 10 font Calibri as the font. That's pretty, I was pretty anal about that, so. The only thing that's not really there is this, which I haven't completed. I'm still working on that,
oh,
but everything's at a 10 font.
Okay.
all right,
Okay.
Mayor Porter.
I'm only, this is just a, you know, if those are able to do it electronically with reference to making corrections, because if we're gonna look at it, once we receive that copy, are we gonna have it in electronic format and also written format, or is it just gonna be totally in electronic format?
So you'll work with Ms. Ball on your recommended changes?
Okay, so it's only gonna be provided to us in electronic format. That's my ask.
You can make a copy of it if you want a copy of it.
I'm just asking. Okay, will you
yeah.
provide that? Okay, just an ask.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Councilmember Bilbro?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was looking at, and I know this is more of a specific question, I just want to make sure that I was maybe understanding your way of thinking, but there is, for economic development, the grant manager and staff assistant are one budget line item, but the change is only about $10,000. So I was just wondering, like, are they one people? I'm just, because usually everybody else has like an assistant who has like a different line item. So I didn't,
Also still under.
Yeah, it's still under administration. Yeah, she is acting in the role right now, so we had to put something in there because she's going to be acting.
oh, so, okay, so this is one
Yeah,
position?
she is the grant manager. Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right, I just
Right.
wanted to clarify. Okay, I'm good, Mr. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Bilbro. Are there any other questions? Okay,
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 and we'll come back to you next week with the budget.
okay. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank
Ojo,
you.
thank you.
But we'll
Ms.
get it this week.
Logan.
We'll get it this week, because you,
By Friday.
okay, and then you'll present it again, okay, because I just want to make sure.
Are these your keys here?
When Friday?
What time Friday?
What time Friday?
close of business.
Ms. Logan, she put her foot down.
Right, give us a
Y'all
break.
haven't seen my emails.
She put her foot down. She said, close the business. I said what I said.
Okay, next we are on reports. 3.1, Mayor Kelly Porter, the mayor's report. Mayor
Thank you,
Porter.
Council Vice President. My report is also in board docs. The report consists of essentially just meetings, and a number of meetings. March the 4th, regular work session. March the 7th, Community Crisis Services meeting with 988 to discuss a facility that I'd like to, at some point in time, have a conversation with the full council on crisis prevention and so forth. The program has also moved ahead steadily. It's also become an integral part of it within the county. But I'd like to have them come in and speak. Public session on March the 11th, and on 19th of March, I attended the Historic Preservation Committee meeting. On the 25th of March, the Student Action Team, which is a team that consists of, in several unincorporated areas that deal with both the Sheriff's Department and several other departments throughout the county, of how they put together actions throughout the county that could be integral to what we do here in Seat Pleasant. So I will be bringing someone in to speak on what those actions are. On the 27th of March, the Maryland Black Mayors meeting, and on the 28th of March, the Autism Ally group meeting. We know that for a period of time, we've had issues with reference to autism and how it's been identified and how it's been dealt with over the years. And we participated in certain other programs, but I'd like to have that group, possibly I'm going to ask permission for the council president to have that group come in perhaps next month to speak to the council with reference to how that group is moving forward to help and how they're providing instruments or equipment to people that may have this ailment and how they hope to help them moving forward. On the 28th also, I had a PG, Prince George's County Mayors Association meeting as well. And I also met with the Chief Financial Officer to discuss some of the arrangements with reference to our financial programs that we have here in the city and how we need to move forward. We're a city that is about to lose what actually have as far as the physical banking situation that we've had here in the city for a number of years, but we are a city right now within our boundaries that actually has no full functional bank in institution, and we need to look at how we're going to deal with that in the upcoming future. On conferences, between the 11th of March and the 13th, I attended the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C., gained quite a bit of information from that particular conference that could be very helpful to this city in a number of different ways, and I will be bringing those things to each one of the council members for their review. March 20th through the 22nd, I participated with the Local Government Advisory Committee retreat in Luray, Virginia. That is I'm a governor's appointment to a local advisory committee. This is a multi-state committee for the Chesapeake Bay and its restoration, which goes into a number of areas: EPA, which deals with stormwater management, brownfields, and all and the like. On March the 23rd, I attended a Ward 1 meeting as a very nice meeting as far as information. The Councilmember Higgs, I did arrive toward the tail end of it, but I understand that quite a bit of information was disseminated at that particular meeting. It had a great turnout, even though it was a rainy day and so forth. So I think people were extremely pleased with that meeting. Councilman Higgs, I'd like to applaud you for that particular meeting and the information that was put out as far as I could hear. I didn't get a chance to get a lot of it, but any of it, but and I appreciated that chicken meal. I think also our esteemed council president appreciated that meal too, since he's so adamantly involved in having chicken in most places. But again, yes, okay. I also attended on March the 25th, I attended the Chevrolet State of the City address. It was to see exactly how that address was put together, both in English and in Spanish. The first half of it was done in English, and then the second half was done in Spanish. The way that they went about the process was excellent. We will have those folks in helping or assisting us in doing some of the things. Certainly things are brought to bear by Council Member Wright and his charge to have that be a part of what's actually going on. As a matter of fact, I had an opportunity there. They had someone from the governor's office there too. And we had additional conversations as to what we're working on as far as that thing to bring someone from the governor's office, if not the governor or lieutenant governor, here to the city. On March the 26th, I attended the Easter egg hunt in Goodwin Park, put on by our police department. It was well attended, okay? Quite a few people out there, even on a very cold day, okay? And by the National Park and Planning was part of that particular arrangement, and they had several things that were there. So we had what you call, like, on the Easter egg roll, which they had, I believe, today, or they had at the Capitol White House. Ours was really nice because it was well attended, and I applaud the police department for a job well done with reference to putting that program together. Okay, I believe for the most part, Mr. Vice President, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councilmember McCarthy.
At the beginning, you mentioned Autismally, the group that you.
Autism Ally, Autism
okay.
Ally.
Well, you said that you wanted them to come out next month. If you can, try to get them this month, because this is Autism Awareness Month this month.
I didn't, because of having that meeting, and I would have tried to get them in, but the agenda was already set.
Well, this is another, we have
But,
another
okay.
meeting.
Okay, well, if we're gonna have one, if you'd like to get them in, I'm sure that they can arrange that for the public session.
Didn't you have the meeting though?
Pardon me?
You had the meeting with them?
I was requested to have a meeting with them because they want me to speak at one of their functions coming up, so they wanted
Well,
to
if
come
you
in and
get us
talk to
the
me.
info, we'll invite them.
Okay, okay.
If you don't want to do it.
We'll
That's
invite
not a problem. I will talk with the council president, send that to bring them inside. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And next on the list is Ms. Ojo, the city manager's report.
Thank you, Vice President Wright. Just wanted to provide you with a report on the goings-on in March. I am pleased to provide you with the report with the city of Seat Pleasant. Of course, this brings us to the spring season, and as we move forward to reimagine what the city will look like as we move into the next fiscal year. So during the month of March, I met with all the department heads to identify their budget and what their outcomes are and their strategic plan as they move forward for fiscal year 25. Also identified what their goals were and initiatives that needed to be considered. All departments were asked to review the current budget, outline departmental needs, and set goals and objectives as such. We had lengthy discussions, each of the departments, to really understand where each department was moving in the next fiscal year. So the Finance, Public Safety, and Grants Department provided me with the projected revenues for the year. That included also the property tax revenues, the permits, grant information, and also some potential revenue streams that the city could support. And also looked at projected revenue streams such as possibly opening up an enterprising account or even getting donations and sponsorships. So I'll continue to meet with the senior staff weekly whenever possible. And it's important to continue to do that with our interdepartmental collaborations. We're working really diligently. Rick is working really hard on Seat Pleasant Day, and he'll have an opportunity to discuss that with you. I guess he's still here. Mayor Porter did attend one of those meetings and was a guest and provided us with an outlook on some of the ongoing things that are happening with the city with regards to legislation and many of the long-term planning that we have as well. Just to remind everyone, Seat Pleasant Day is going to be on Saturday, May 4th. All employees are asked to attend and be a part of that day. So we're really looking forward to it, and Rick is working really hard to get everything coordinated. So during our last meeting, I made two recommendations for streamlining the council meeting through utilizing a consent and an action agenda that will be presented by me and Ms. Ball later on. And we believe it may be a way to streamline some of the process within the city, but that, of course, will be up to the council. But we're real excited to provide you with a presentation at our upcoming meeting. Additionally, in the month of March, I prepared the 2023 annual report that was provided to you at the previous council meeting. That was also put in the format of a newsletter. So that should be going out to all of our residents very shortly. And they will be able to learn about what's happening in the city and what our progress is. We're also expanding too. We did notice that our newsletter does not go to our business community, so I think it's going to be important, Mayor Porter, to have them understand and know what we're doing in the city as well. So that is all I have. That concludes my report, and I'll open up for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ojo. Any questions for Ms. Ojo? Mayor Porter?
This is a concern that I have, and I've noticed it, and even more so today, with reference to our major thoroughfares. I had talked about this before, and hopefully it's not that we're coming after the fact or too late with reference to it, but I don't know whether or not any of the other council members have noticed it. But outside the fact that people are being very colorful with how they color their homes, whether or not that's uniformity, I understand that that was okay. We'll deal with that. But now we're dealing with fences on major thoroughfares that come up that are not exactly the most desirable looking fences, okay, to our city, and especially on our main thoroughfares. These are wooden fences that don't have exactly, I don't know what the privacy aspect of it, but when you have a fence of that particular magnitude on the main thoroughfares, when you look at the aesthetics and how we want to look at people, how they come into our city, that's something that needs to be considered, and we may need to put in some type of restrictions, perhaps, okay? I don't know how the council feels about it, but one would wonder, because if you just have a whole row, a line all the way down the roadway of just wooden fences popped up that's 6 feet high, could become problematic, okay, to us. Just like when we talked about in Ward 3, whereas Councilwoman Scott had indicated that there was something in the matter of it being undesirable from reference to a tire shop that took place that's also near a main thoroughfare that just doesn't have quite the aesthetics that one might want to have in the community. So I'm looking at that as something, if we don't get in front of it, we may have gated situations all over the city that just don't make the city look that appealing. And one would wonder why they need a fence of that magnitude and what's hidden behind the fence, okay? That there's a need for that type of fence in certain areas, or any area for that matter, of that type.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Bilbro?
I'm just a little curious. Are you suggesting like a city-run pseudo HOA situation? Because that's kind of what it's starting to sound like.
Well, you're saying pseudo, I'm simply indicating that there are certain areas or certain communities when you have something that could become a possibility, depending on how it's manicured over a period of time, become an eyesore. I've seen fence situations like that not properly maintained or not put in properly could become a problem with reference to the community.
Right, no, I understand your explanation. What I'm asking is, are you suggesting an HOA? Because that's kind of the premise of most HOAs is we don't want our neighborhood to like an eyesore. We want everything to have some semblance of uniformity. We want certain things to, no, you can't have a fence 9 feet high. No, you can't have a fence 3 feet low. So that's what I'm asking is because that's That's a whole different beast.
What I'm simply saying, Councilmember Beerbro, is to get in front of the possibility of something that might perhaps get out of line if we're not looking into what is actually taking place in that arena. You know, I'm simply indicating that we want to have people come into the city and see this city in a certain light, especially on major thoroughfares. Aesthetics of how your city looks is extremely important to that arrangement. I'm not trying to be, come in there where we have some situation where we tell people, you gotta do this, you gotta do, but I do know even on the Historic Preservation Committee, when people wanna come in and do fencing, there's a certain type of fencing they're allowed to do, okay? And certain fencing they're not allowed to do that could, because you have to ask a reason, or when they're putting the fencing up, why? That they have to have it at different types of fences that can actually go up. And so we should look at that to see exactly why they're putting that fence in that particular area. I'm just saying it's something we need to look into. But no, I didn't say try to create an HOA situation, but, you know, if it means, you know, you do have to have some guidelines as to what people put in the city.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Love and then Ms. Higgs.
We do.
About the fences, or just to address that, Mayor Port, I feel that you're talking about homeowners now who may have a preference to a wooden fence. And as long as that fence is put up properly, whether they put a wooden fence or a metal fence, you know what I'm saying, as long as it's been installed properly, I don't think it's on any of our business whether they got a wooden, I mean, if you don't like wooden fences, that's one thing.
I didn't say that.
Well, I'm just saying, a wooden fence versus a metal fence. Some people have dogs, then maybe you know, I'm saying there's different reasons why they have those. And I don't want to put any more stress on my residents about a fence.
Thank you, Councilmember Love. Councilmember Higgs?
My feedback to that was just simply, I had a conversation with Chief Harris on a walk, one of our ward walks, and there's some type of law about your fence in the front yard. Now, I'm not sure about the backyard, but if it's on the front of your house, if you already don't have a fence there, you really can't put up a fence, but it has to be at least 4 feet. You know, that's that minimum. So there are laws that's in order, you know, in place already, so we just need to, once we get, you know, code enforcement in, I think, you know, NCC will be able to enforce certain things.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Higgs. Councilmember Bilbro?
Unrelated to fences. Ms. Ojo, I noticed that we didn't have a public engagement report in here. Is that I'm not seeing one. I see one for everybody else. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, hold on just
Oh,
a
okay.
second.
I just.
No, we don't have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was one. I saw something that said presentation. So it's not in there, but Rick will be speaking on his report. He'll provide a written report to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Bilbro. If there aren't any other questions,
Yeah, we send it to you.
yeah, if there aren't any other questions, we'll move to the next manager, Ms. Ojo.
Okay, then. Up again.
No, I was just, who else would you like to go?
Okay,
The next
then.
person.
Okay, so, again, all of these most of these reports are in board docs, and I think, Ms. Ball just received, Rick's, did you receive it? Okay. Okay, then. We'll make you first, Rick. Okay. Thank you, your public engagement manager, Rick Corrales.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay. So April has been started, right? And it's not April Fool's Day, so I'm going to give you the short and sweet on March. Social engagement, as far as digital platforms, we're up 132% from the previous 90 days. I went, because I've only been here 30, so I wanted to be fair into what was going on last year. So if we match 90 days to 90 days for this year compared to what was happening last year, we're actually up 132%, while the engagement in Facebook is up 197%. So we are starting to get some engagement from our community through social media. So it's working in some aspects. I understand it's not for every member in the community, but the ones that are starting to pick it up, they're actually starting to engage, they're actually starting to share and comment on us, which is a great thing, because we want that. We want that type of engagement. The Call a Bus reservations, we received 49 reservations this month. You know, and I'll tell you, Mr. Mack is going through a personal thing with his wife. So I'm being very understanding of his personal situation, but to make sure that that does not jeopardize our community, we're making sure that that's all covered in the days that he does need to balance out to take his wife to any type of appointment. Then we'll make sure that he gets covered. Okay, I try to be as transparent as I can with what's happening with the staff, and these are the things that we have to remain always mindful of, that they are people. See Pleasant Day preparations. We actually had a great meeting with the chief today, kind of going over what we're gonna be able to provide that day with the police department. We're gonna close the streets at 6 a.m. and reopen them back up at the end of the festivity at 4 p.m. We're actually gonna end 1 hour earlier than previous years, but I think it'll be well worth it because we want to make sure everybody gets home safely and with no incidents. We did start our digital marketing today, actually, so we'll see how that starts hitting numbers and how our registrations start to grow. We did save some money. We are getting the county's hydraulic stage, which will be a nice stage with the roof, so that's going to save us over $5,000 just on staging, whereas previous year we were paying for that information. After the mayor informed me that the county also has some additional items that we can use to have a fun activity for the kids, I reached out to them, so I'm waiting to get feedback from the county on what we will be able to utilize that day, so we don't just keep spending and spending on See Pleasant Day. However, we did receive one corporate donation so far, so I hope to keep that going. It's just a matter of knocking doors, right? So if you know anyone, please pass them my way, because I'm still new to the city. I'm getting to know everybody, but I think that that's going to be important. I spoke to a couple of council members. I wanted to just mention this part. It's not fully developed yet, but just to preview it, I want to start some community committees. In other words, if we want to paint the dog park floor yellow or orange, we should get some feedback from our community members. And what that means, and that's just one example of what we can do to start engaging a lot more within our wards and have representatives from each ward have a say on what we do with how we're making and beautifying the city. One of the ideas is to make sure that all of these committees do have a champion that sits on this board. So this way, that champion can say, hey, you know what? This is what we're doing. One good one that actually DC beat me to it, but Hyattsville hasn't, is a Hispanic one. We want to have some folks that represent that Hispanic community, as I've heard a couple of you tell me that, you know, and I think that a Hispanic committee that kind of gives us their perspective will be important. And there'll be several other committees. I think we talked with the police department, you know, the education and youth one, and we're not talking about kids in the high school or the elementary school. We're talking about that 18 to 25-year-old who's going to college, who's just moved back in because they took over a family member's house. They need some education on how to properly proceed. So I think that that's going to be an important one. And then this one kind of ties in what's happening in Baltimore and what Ms. Ojo was talking about, which is training, but proper training. You know, I looked over our emergency preparedness program for the city. It basically makes the mayor the FEMA chief of operation. Mr. Mayor, may I ask you, have you been trained on the FEMA 300 course?
No, I've not, sir.
So I think that these are important pieces that if we have a plan in place and it's been approved by other members, or if you were sitting here when that was approved, you know, we have to have the right training for these individuals. So what I proposed to the chief today was like, let's get a list of everybody that's been trained and see how we fit them into an emergency operations center. So this way we can properly execute this plan if we ever need to. If we have a catastrophic scenario that occurs in our city, we should be able to execute it properly and have the correct training for those members. That is kind of the Skippy of what I wanted to present to you today. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any questions? Mayor Porter.
I don't have any questions. I just, again, we don't oftentimes extend the fact that when folks are doing a decent job, a good job, and they've hit the ground running, they're doing some things that we need to have done. I will say to you that I'm really working very hard to establish a business association. It was kind of minutely was mentioned by Ms. Ojo, but I'm trying to put together a business association. I have a few people that are coming tomorrow to meet, and this is the way we establish arrangements in our businesses to get the businesses to also put back into the community, because they take out and we want to make sure they put back in other than just paying taxes here to stay. So that's something I'm letting you know, that we may have some other contributors coming to help us with these events that we have.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
Thank you. Your next manager, Ms. Ojo?
Okay, thank you very much. I will call up our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Betty Logan.
Good evening. You do have the report in board doc. For the month of March, Department of Finance has been extremely busy. The first thing on the agenda is always the first thing on our agenda is to make sure the audits are done as quickly as possible. For the FY21 audit, I did have a meeting with the audit firm on March 20th where they provided draft financial statements for discussion. And I learned at that time that the audit partner was going out of the country for the rest of the month of March. And so consequently, I believe he's still out of the country, so that delayed actually the issuance of the financial statements. I do have them. We've been going over them with the audit manager, addressing any questions, making sure that we have all of the footnote disclosures for the financial statement. In my discussion with the audit partner, the financial statements will be issued in April. Actually, I have a signed copy of the draft financial statement with a signature, but didn't have a date. But the April date will be in there, so that will bring closure to the FY21 audit. We have already started preparing work for the FY22 audit. We've started doing the back reconciliations, doing account reconciliations as well, to try to get ahead of the game, so when the auditors do come in, we can provide them draft financial, draft trial balance or general ledger listing of all of the account balances as of June 30, 2022. The payroll transition from ADP to Paycheck actually has been working very smoothly. The transition team for the city, the police department, human resource, environmental justice, as well as finance, have been meeting weekly with them, providing them information, access to ADP payroll system to be able to extract personal data with regard to each employee. That process is currently ongoing. ADP processed their last payroll for the city on this past Saturday. And so the payroll that we're in now will be processed by Paycheck, which will be paid on April 12th. And I don't know, Mayor and council members, whether you noticed that you got your April check early because of this transition, because Paycheck was not able to process on their side. So we decided to pay you early so we won't make sure that you were compensated. The FY '25 budget, Finance did provide revenues. The revenues in the budget represent 9 months of actual revenues, and then we projected just the last 3 months. And so we noticed a considerable amount of revenues have come in just in 9 months. And so that was able to allow us to really prepare a budget that's more realistic, that when you're looking at actual data for 9 months, you can easily project for the next 3 months. And the revenue source will be somewhat adequate when it comes to actually preparing the budget for FY '25. And one thing we will be looking at to make sure with regard to the FY '25 budget is to look at the amendment to the FY '24 budget to make sure all of the amendments with regard to grants that may have come in, to include that as well in the FY '24 budget for FY '24, and making sure that all of the numbers do agreed and there is clear explanation of the various descriptions throughout the budget. Another item I just want to bring to your attention, Finance assumed the responsibility of billing and collecting business personal property tax. We took over that responsibility last year. And for the month of March, the city received over $220,000 in business personal property tax. And so we have a schedule where we send out invoices on a regular basis and really follow up with the business owners to make sure that they pay those taxes timely. There was one thing that was somewhat unusual that I noticed in the month of March. The city received a number of cutoff notices. 2 in particular stood out. One, these are utility bills. One for a property, a WSAC bill at a property address of 6512 Seat Pleasant Drive. We looked to see whether or not the city actually owned that property, and we learned that that property had been sold to a resident back in 2020. And we also noticed a Comcast bill that came in with a cutoff notice. And we were unable to identify, we couldn't get an actual invoice, but when we looked at the service address, which was 1802 Bright Seat Road, Suite 303 in Hyattsville, Maryland, and talking with the human resource manager, it appears that the city may have rented this property back in 2020 and 21. And so it raised a concern, at least from finance perspective, that the city's names are still on properties where they no longer own or use, and utilities companies are not being made aware of that. And so we immediately notified the utility company and let them know whoever the property owner is. Now, you need to contact them to let them know you're going to be turning off their electricity or you're turning off their water. And so that's something that we're going to be initiating a project to really identify all of the properties that the city owns, as well as all the utility bills, to make sure that the city is paying for utility services that is actually using on city property. So that's a project that we're going to have our finance assistants to start working on that. And I do want to really give her kudos. When these cutoff notices come in, she immediately, without even asking, start calling utility company to ask for an extension until we figure out where can we obtain a copy of the bill so that we can then figure out whether or not the city needs to really pay that bill. The revenue highlights, for the month of March, the city had a balance of $7,046,508 in industrial bank. And that has been something that I mentioned to the city council, that the city needs to diversify. That's too much money to have in one bank. It's over the FDIC limit. And I mentioned earlier that the city does not have collateral over these deposits, and that's something I am working with Industrial Bank. They have provided me some information, and I'm going to ask to meet with Councilwoman Love and the Budget and Finance Committee to present that information so we can come up which collateral plan the city want to use. Because one thing for the FY '21 audit, that will be an audit finding that the state is going to have against the city. because those funds in FY '21 were not collateralized, nor were they collateralized in FY '22 as well as FY '23. So we're trying to remedy that problem for FY '24. There are other revenues came in from the state of Maryland, the Crime Prevention Youth and Victims Grant, a little over $60,000. Prince George's County real estate tax is $26,000. The state of Maryland income tax, and this particular one is somewhat interesting. That's $12,842. You know, we checked the state revenue site and look at all of the revenues that the city receives from not only the state but also the county, and we noticed that the state provides a local income tax to the city, which was, and this represents that $12,842. So there's a local tax that residents are being paid, and those monies are coming to the city, which I thought that was somewhat interesting, because the first time I noticed that, because I noticed that most incorporated municipalities, there is a local income tax in addition to a county tax. There are a number of expenditures for the month of March. The city paid out through Bill.com $414,008. And there's some additional expenditures that were paid outside of Bill.com, which are listed on page 5 of the report. You know, some other utilities, Pepco, as well as some human resource related expenditures. And so I'll stop at this time, and if you have any questions, I'll take them.
Sure, thank you. I have two questions. I noticed in the expenditures, you have the African American Mayors Association. And I think it's a good thing that our mayor belongs to that organization. I'm fairly familiar with it. But why are there two expenditures for that?
That was really, that check was issued as a manual check. And so in Bill.com, in order to issue a manual check, we have to run everything to Bill.com. And unfortunately, when one of the staff went in to process the manual check, he didn't realize that the check had already been approved. So it occurred twice. So we caught that. That had happened with another representative as well, and I caught that. But that's something we'll pay close attention to, because I mentioned to him this evening that when you're running a manual check, it has already been approved by me. We just not issue to Bill.com. We just need to put it in the system so they can automatically be recorded in QuickBooks. And so, but I'll make sure I check that more closely, because I noticed that on Saturday when I was going through the report, but I did miss that particular one.
Okay, thank you. My other question is Chick-fil-A. Unlike the president, I'm more of a barbecue man, but why is it $687 and some change for Chick-fil-A?
And if Ms. Ball is here on the Chick-fil-A, Ms. Ball can maybe elaborate more about the Chick-fil-A, because that was also a manual check, but that one did not occur twice. I think that was for the upcoming budget meeting. Okay. And she can elaborate. Am I correct?
That was for Ward 1 meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was for Ward 1 meeting on the
Okay,
23rd of March.
okay,
That
I'm
was
sorry,
that.
yes, okay. I apologize, Ms. Ball.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very, I mean, that's all from me. Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions?
Quick.
Oh, okay, Mayor Porter.
This is just a quick one. The legislation, and I didn't go through the legislation aspect of what we were dealing with, but I do know that you said the fact that we had dealt with some things and we got certain monies that had come in, okay, for this particular budget cycle. Has there been any effect from the legislation? Because we know that the legislation that we had that was sort of not allowing us to receive funding because of the audit process. Has any of that money, okay, because the legislation passed with amendments, okay, with reference to that kind of arrangement, so those council members that don't know that, that's taken place. But when it came down to the police department and things of that nature, which is where some of that money wasn't allowed, okay, was there any effect, was there any change with some of those funding situations did come forward as a result of that, or are we still waiting for those funds that were, sort of taxed?
We're still waiting for those funds that are approved prior to that budget. That budget is going to be prospective when that goes into place.
So there
And
may be some additional funding forthcoming.
Yes.
Okay.
So one good thing, currently, under the current budget, the state was withholding 100%. With the budget being approved and this legislation being approved, instead of withholding 100%, it will only hold 20%, and it does exclude the police department.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Logan.
Thank you.
Ms. Ojo, your next manager, please.
Okay, our next manager is gonna be, Ms. Rhoda.
Good evening.
Let me start with the ARPA report. As you know, I've been mentioning to you all that we need to get together and talk about projects that you may want to do. Just in listening to you, and I've heard 2 or 3 different projects right off the bat, and you didn't even know. Mayor, your business meeting, and we talked earlier, so we need to get together. Everybody doesn't need to do it because many of you have, or some of you have spent your money, your allocation. So there are some interesting ideas that I've heard over the past week. So if we can formally get together individually and talk about different projects that more than one, if you want to. So that's what I'm gonna say about that. There was another question about the ARPA. Are we doing the correct types of projects? The Feds weekly have a virtual meeting. Is called ARPA Office Hours, where you can come online. It's in their regional, so this for our region. You can come online and have questions, or you need help with anything, and I always go on there. And they're very user-friendly. The last report that we had to turn in, they actually did it with me online because not a lot of people show up. I don't know why. I thought it would be packed, but no. I'm talking 2 or 3 people, and the region is from like Philly to, Virginia. So I was very surprised, but it was like, well, I'm just going to take advantage of that. So they're very user-friendly. You're welcome. I can share the link with you if you would like to attend. They're usually held on Tuesdays mornings. So also the PAMC program, as you know, we've been approached to do another economic development project, which is good. That Seat Pleasant is always in the back of people's minds when we have something positive going on there. They always come to us, and so this is an example of that. So the success of the Martin Luther King Highway Road Diet and Bicycle Lane project, they said, well, let's come back and see what else we can do. So on the table now is the possibility of an economic development feasibility study. So in your package, you'll see an update on his report and how we need to go ahead and start moving on that if the council is still interested in doing that. Okay, let's see what else we got. The Foot Street project, our DPI is just slowing us down. Everything they asked us to do, we've done, we paid for it, and it's just taking longer than we anticipated. Even the project manager is surprised at how long it's taken. But we're moving. We do have the stakes in the ground. They're supposed to come out and be through with this by the end of the month, if not before. I'm not even going to say that long. But that's where we are with that. We want to put together RFP for the Cultural Hub. The Cultural Hub is going to involve several components, which will involve several RFPs. we've identified 9 components to the cultural hub in Goodwin Park. So that will be at least 9 RFPs that we need to develop. So, what else we got going? The Civic Leadership Institute is completed. We had several capstone projects that were presented. The leadership asked me to do the re-establishment of a tri-jurisdictional collaborative, which is very, very much needed, which would mean that a collaboration between the 20743 municipalities, Fairmont Heights, Steep Platte, and South. So at this juncture in our economic history, we need to do that. It's a little disturbing how divided we are as those 3 municipalities in the same zip code with the largest amount of health disparities and the lowest number of low-income persons, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on and on. So the collaborative will be working with us. They're on a little hiatus right now, so they will be coming back and talking about implementation of all these capstone projects. So I'll keep you abreast of that. And I appreciate everybody's assistance with taking over the former staff assistant person, but I want to be able to do more than just, schedule conferences and things like that. I want to make sure that you're abreast of legislation that's out, and thank you, Mayor Porter, for that list. Public hearings and other things that you can do as an individual council person to keep your constituents abreast of what's going on outside of Sea Pleasant, which is very important. So I want to explore more of those type of things for you. That's very important to me. So that's all I have to say right now. Any questions?
I have a question, but go ahead, Councilmember McCarthy.
The capstone project that you have as an attachment at the end of your report, are you able to email that? When you click the attachment here, it's asking me to sign in to,
Okay.
you gotta remember, I'm operating off of an iPad.
Okay.
And so it's asking me to sign in to an app that I'm not using on my iPad.
Okay.
So if you're able to email that to us, that way we can view it. I don't know if anybody else is having issues viewing it, but I can't see it, so.
The original project was to address the food desert in the 20743 zip code. However, you know how when you're in college, you have a meeting with your advisor. So that's what we had, and she was like, I think you should segue into what I said earlier, because there's a lot of projects that could fall under the Tri-City collaboration. Lots of projects, including the food desert. So we made that one of the first initiatives of the collaboration when it gets off the ground. And especially in view of the Blue Line Corridor development, we just do not need to be divided or unaware of what's going on. So, yeah. So we also talked about a 207 cooperative. Farmers market, using local farmers. Part of the capstone project showed a map with all the tobacco shops on it from PG Atlas. Very disturbing, but maybe an initiative to have each one of those or some of those tobacco shops have a food stand in their store, since people want to frequent it so much. Let's see if we can get some healthy food in there. But I mean, there's all kinds of initiatives. So.
Ms. Roder, I have a question. You touched on this real quick and then you jumped off it. In terms of a bike lanes on Martin Luther King Avenue, is that active proposal to have that? I mean, I don't have nothing against bikes. I once had a bike, but is there going to be, what is that?
We have bike lanes.
It's already there, but
We have bike lanes.
nobody.
You walk it all the time. You seen them bike lanes?
Nobody used it like they do in the district, so.
Well, I stand corrected, but. Yeah, okay, I stand corrected.
I got a visiting payment, I know it.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Ride a bike.
I will. Mr. Mayor.
I want to thank you, Ms. Rhoda. Ms. Rhoda's, you know, again, coming back into when people are doing a yeoman's job, and coming in and taking over, and then being able to do it well, certainly has been helpful to me with reference to getting things done, okay, and keeping me on track of certain things too, which has been quite nice. I want to applaud Ms. Rhoda. She has completed the course, okay, and that course that she did it wasn't easy. It was difficult, okay, and she was able to do that, keep up with her other work. I'm gonna give her a hand here, y'all.
It wasn't an intense course, it was more of a networking and helping each other out. It was composed of elected officials, students, residents, seniors, everybody, there was 30 of us. And there were a lot of people that didn't know processes like zoning. We had a very intense course on zoning. It was intense. And then we had a very good panel discussion that was phenomenal with
Ms. Rhoda did a lot of work, y'all.
civic activities.
This is quite a lot of work. You did a lot of work. It was a lot of work involved. You know, she might want to be modest about it. It's a lot of work. You know, and that was, you know.
But it was
Yeah.
worth the time. It was
Yeah.
great meeting all those
It's
people.
gonna be, and I want to thank you for it because it
Starting
was something.
networking,
Thank you.
relationship building for us.
Right.
Yeah, it was great. So we were first cohort, so that makes it even more special.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rhoda. I'll consult you when I buy a bike, so,
Well,
yeah.
what you say? When you get a bike?
Thank you. Ms. Ojo, your next manager.
As you all know, my report is in board docs, and, we didn't have too many hires this year. I mean, this month, in the month of March, we had, one termination, which was in public engagement, prepared new employee packets, hopefully. One was in EJD and one was in finance. I really kind of want to skip to the operations part of my report. Operations has been something I've been doing since 2021, and operations was a position before the furlough. And what the operations person did was take care, as Ms. Betty noted, of the Comcast bills, the cable bills, new employee, telephones, iPads. Oh, thank you. Okay, operations handle new employees, telephones, iPad, laptops, set them up with Peak and stuff like that. That's something, a position that I have mentioned since it was removed during the furlough, but I kind of kept doing it because really we didn't have anybody. I met with former acting city manager Mosley on it, and I've met with Ms. Ojo about that position, and it's very much needed. When an employee leaves, there's things you have to cut off. When an employee comes, things you have to turn on, make sure they have devices and such. So during the budget hearing, Ms. Ojo recommended that we get a HR generalist, and that would be a part of their duties. But I just wanted to mention it because it's very important that we find someone that can take over those responsibilities. As noted in my report, there were a number of meetings with the city manager. There were meetings with staff. There were meetings with legit on employee complaints. It was open enrollment last month. Open enrollment is now closed, so all things are new for city employees with their health, dental, vision, and so forth and so on. And that's pretty much the highlight of things that HR did. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Are there any questions for Ms. Barber?
I did want to mention, my apologies for cutting you guys off. In my report, it says approve retirement CBIZ, that's our retirement plan. Also in my report, you'll notice that we have some conflict. The council has approved in 2022 and 3, $60,000 to go into the 401k plan. Well, and then 115 in 2024. Me and Ms. Logan have been working, and Ms. Ojo have been working with CBIZ. Ms. Logan's going to find out how, because 2022 and 23 didn't get to CBIZ. And honestly, as we all know, we didn't have enough staff and finance to oversee that and make sure it was done. 24 has been done, 115. Now we got to find out where we can get that money, that 22 and 23 money that was delegated for the 401A to get to the retirement company. So I just want to make you all aware of that. Any questions? Ms. McCarthy, you look confused. Okay.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Barber? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Barber.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Well, Ms. Ojo, you only have one more manager in the room right now.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and distinguished members of the City Council. So of course, my report for public safety is in board docs. I do want to take some time to kind of highlight a couple of things, particularly as it relates to crime. So in my report, you'll see that we are showing a 50% reduction in violent crime in the city, which is a pretty awesome. Is really something you guys can promote. I am still concerned about the petty crimes, the thefts, and those things which are on the higher end when it comes to businesses like the dollar store and CVS. And so we're working with them on that. We did have a couple of theft from autos throughout the month. I am proud to say that we made 5 arrests in theft from autos, particularly those people, one person being arrested 3 times for the same crime, which I think had to do with some mental health issues. So we're working with the state's attorney on mental health court to try to alleviate those issues. And so we're doing a good job of identifying and making those apprehensions under Detective Richardson. She's doing a lot of the follow-up and things like that, but it's still of concern. I'm working with the Metropolitan Police Department on Eastern Avenue again. They recently complained about the uptick in crime on Eastern Avenue on the DC side. And so I was able to send them a list of profiles of the individuals that they're looking at, because most of those individuals were individuals that we've kind of pushed out of the city. And so we're going to continue to see, while DC is seeing an uptick, we're not necessarily seeing it in the apartments, but it is of concern, because if they're complaining about it, then they'll be out there to push them back into Sea Pleasant, and really the goal is to alleviate it. When it comes to NCC, those 2 positions are still vacant, which is extremely still concerning. We did give an offer to one experienced code enforcement officer who recently declined the position. But there are a couple, we need to really fill it. It's definitely a huge need. I know I've met with Ms. Ojo briefly and some members of the council about a plan that we possibly can come up with to activate some residents, so I'm looking forward to that. I do have some immediate recommendations, though, we need to look at. And I want to just keep on everybody's mind: solid waste, drainage. I do want to revisit our ordinance on animals, smoking in public places, and bulk trash and storage. I think one of the things that we are struggling in is that the notice between a violation and when they have time to correct the violation seems to be a bit much. Where most municipalities are able to fine immediately. When it comes to like bulk trash and things like that, we need to be able to, I think, cite immediately versus versus waiting. And so it does bring up some concerns, in my opinion. And so long-term, I would like for us to kind of look at those things. I do have the ward walk schedule ready. So I'm going to send out that this week with some available dates from now until about June or July. I've placed them on our overlap days to avoid the overtime for the police department. So I'll send out a bunch of dates. And then, you know, I believe like last year, you guys kind of chose what might work best for you. We're willing to make those accommodations. If none of those dates work, we can reply back and we can kind of figure something out. But I really want to get to a point where we're able to do each ward twice. I did come up, there's a company that we were working with for the past couple of years on traffic solutions. And so their pricing on some of the solar paneled traffic signs and things like that were a bit high. Recently, I did find another company that University Park and Riverdale was using, and the cost is actually probably 75% cheaper on those solar panel, like stop signs, things like that. And so I'm going to send some recommendations to the city manager about what we can do for particularly in front of C. Pleasant Elementary, Ward 1. We've had an issue with a stop sign right off of James Farmer, so that we had to move and we had to place back, but it's still having some issues with people not stopping. So I think if we look at the solar panel that lights up, I think you may have seen them like in Hydesville and some other areas. The cost is extremely cheaper than we saw in the past. So I think that may be some solutions we can work together on. I think, first of all, I think it's a beautification thing for the city, but it also can kind of help us in some of those problem areas when it comes to stopping and going. This past month, we ran about 2,300 calls for service. We're at about a 78% increase in our calls for service. So we have seen an uptick, but of course, as the weather changes, we see more people out. And so we're seeing like the hanging out in front of Blue Sky, which we would try to prevent as much as possible, and Capital Liquors. And so I want to really look at us working with the business owners. And I've noticed a couple of new businesses coming in shopping centers. And so I would like for us to possibly look at an ordinance where it requires the shopping center owners to notify us, 60 days or 90 days before the business comes in. And not saying that we would stop whatever business they're working with, but before the business comes in, we make the notifications made to us instead of us, driving around and magically finding out. I think that can kind of help with us not only getting the inspections and the business license done, but we can actually put notifications out in the newsletter and things like that of what businesses are coming to the city. C. Pleasant Elementary is going to send out some stuff about the autism conference that's coming up. Remember, you guys approved last year that donation that actually pays for it. And so when that comes out, I'll make sure you all get it. I will note the Easter egg hunt that happened last week, that was not a police department event. That's something that Park and Planning had hosted. It wasn't sent out. That's why we didn't send it out or anything like that. They reserved the park. They actually reserved the park a couple of months ago. And so, of course, if something's going on, we try to participate as much as possible. We were down there. But I did mention to LaDonna and some people to direct the notifications, like make sure you guys are notified more of a timely manner when that stuff was occurring, so we can kind of put it out. I think the promotion on it was kind of late. And so I know I saw on social media there were some concerns about, they had 2,000 eggs out there, and I think they were gone in like the first 5 minutes. But I did see some concerns on social media that all the kids who wanted to participate didn't necessarily get a chance to. And so I did relay that to the activity center just about that. PAL is still going. I participated in quite a few panels and different things this past month. Recovery Centers of America hosted a state of, I think it was called like State of Black in Our Community, where I spoke on a panel about drug usage and the effects on communities. Our coffee and conversations we had this past month was pretty good. I think we're going to host another one in April, the end of April, at the Dunkin' Donuts. And our food giveaways. Well, we really didn't do much. It was Grace Cathedral and Shabbat Ministries, but they came in February. But they also came in March, because what happened was that Shabbat, if you don't know, travels throughout the entire county and does food giveaways. But when a city or something cancels, they still want to do it. So we end up having one in February and March, because in March, I believe Kettering had canceled at the last minute. So they said, well, if C. Pleasant's willing to host us, we'll have another one. So that's why we had another one. And so I do want to shout them out, because I'm grateful that they considered us to come back. The Activity Center, the seniors, they're there every day from from 10 to 2. Please, if you have some time, please go by and see them. I'll be honest with you, I was having a pretty rough day one day last week, and I went down there to see them, and they were in there dancing. They were having a really good time. And it's really good to see some of our residents that we don't always get to see because they're on the caller bus and things like that, so they don't drive. They're not going to come to the meetings, things like that. But they are at the activity center, so it's really good to see some of them and some of the activities they have going on. Other than that, I will take any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for Chief Harris?
You're doing a fine job, Chief.
Thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy?
I know you mentioned that crime was down in the city, but that there was still a high number of, you labeled them like petty crimes. Where does like the gunshots fall in that? Cause like, I hear a lot of like just random gunfire, right? But we're not getting any notification that somebody was shot, right? So it's just random gunfire. Like, where does that fall?
That's a really good question. So particularly Ward 5 in the Valley, we've gotten a lot of calls for gunshots, for gunfire. What's happening is the gunfire is coming from the other side of C Pleasant Drive that's not in our incorporated area. They have had quite a bit over there. My officers have assisted, but nothing has hit our statistics because it was not necessarily C Pleasant. I will tell you that a gunfire that does not actually hit somebody, hit a person or anything like that isn't even categorized as a shooting or anything. It's categorized as a vandalism, and that's how Prince George's County has it. So, particularly behind the Sugar Shack, that is another still a problem for us. And so I did meet with the mayor of Prince George's County about it because I talked to quite a few residents of Ward 5 who are still hearing it. Make it very clear it is not in C Pleasant, but it is right outside our jurisdiction. And so the same house, a couple of houses behind there, are still having some issues. And I've been talking to the county about their patrols. I understand that they are hundreds and hundreds short in patrol. I get that, not my problem. But they really got to take care of their area. That, you know, they had a shooting one day, and our guys, of course, were the first people to respond. But I can't just use all our resources for them. But that entire side, so maybe we need to look at some annexing or something in those areas, because it just really, I just don't see a proper solution unless we step up and really and kind of do what we need to do. I don't know if we can get the signatures or the agreements from the residents over there, but I mean, they're not getting no services now, so they might as well join us and get the services, right? Get the trash picked in 2 days and have a police force. And so, but we're always down there responding to things at the Sugar Shack and things like that, just simply because, when Prince George's County has a district, I get it, the district is so big, so the district is here, and they have land over there down on 202 and Dodge Park and things like that, and they're having some areas over there, so they're not probably focused as much over here. But it definitely needs some attention. And so I know NED and some of the drug task force are doing some things in the area, but they need to take care of the area. Did that help? Did I answer somewhat? I did get Mr. Rayner, I did get the house on C Pleasant Drive with that has that parties. He did come and meet with the assistant chief today about possibly trying to host his event coming up. But we're putting some very strict stipulations on that. So when that happens, I want to kind of, our officers will be there, but I want to let you guys know in advance so you guys can let your constituents know. The loud music in the middle of the night and things like that, we've kind of told him we were going to go up there and we're going to unplug every speaker. But he's amenable to it. He's only hiring C Pleasant officers now, and so. But before that happens, I want to kind of run that past the city manager and then let you guys know that. But he has requested a special events permit again. We'll go from there.
Yeah, because I can hear that all the way at my house, and I'm at the other end.
Yeah.
Is that I'm sorry.
The house on the hill.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there was a party at Sugar Shack not too long ago. I want to say maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, and it was like a whole thing. It was like cars out there.
It wasn't a visual, because they did do a candlelight vigil a couple of weeks ago down in the area.
Yeah.
Was it a vigil?
Somebody that passed away
Yeah.
somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, because I knew it was like mad people when I just drove by, and I had a couple constituents ask about it.
Generally, if we're notified in a timely manner, I can try to send it out. I think with they had a vigil down there a couple weeks ago. We were notified last minute.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Councilman.
It's me again. So, can we, until we can, annexation takes time. Until we can move forward with the annexation plan, can we try to get some type of MOU with the Sugar Shack? Where maybe they're paying for police services or something, so that even if we are using our resources over there, we're getting paid for it.
So I wouldn't mind authorizing the officers to work secondary employment down there if the Sugar Shack was willing to pay for that, have officers there. That's something we did engage that at one point. I think when I first got to Sea Pleasant, they weren't really interested in that. That's something we can re-engage. I think that maybe some pressure from the elected officials here that may help, cause especially those who actually lived in that area and go down there, they may know your faces a little more. That may help a little bit. We'll retry it. I think it works. It helps at Sea Pleasant Wigs. It helps at other areas in the city, Capital Liquors, and so it could help. And they'll be right there. It's just a matter of re-engaging him to see if he's willing to do it. They just don't want to pay the money.
Right, and I've spoken to them directly because I probably frequent there the most because it's on my street. And I've told them, like, you know, it's gonna cost you money, but you need it. You know, the disturbances over here, like, it's at any given moment there could be 10 cars in that parking lot, 5 people out front, and it's about to get hot outside. And I mean, people like to hang out. We like to we like community,
Yeah.
right? And so, in order to keep that community safe, I think something needs to be done.
I do like I mean, he has no problem with the viewing the camera footage and us being a part of there. I think he just doesn't pay the money, and I think it's more money if we charged him from the city from an overtime standpoint, right? He said we put an overtime card there, but secondary employment is a lot cheaper, and he wasn't willing to pay that. And so we just need to find another way to re-engage and show the benefits of it, because there is a benefit, and you'll see a major reduction of crime just by the presence of a uniformed officer there. So I definitely agree.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Porter?
It was already addressed, okay, on the aspect of the annexation, okay, but we do have several calls, as we had a brief discussion on how we're gonna go about doing that. The citizens that live in that area are gonna help us, okay? Even though if the annexation takes a while, a period of time, the fact that we're at the table and we're talking with them, they're gonna help tremendously, okay, in getting that done. So that's, as we put together our meeting, that we're gonna be meeting with these, when you talked about HOAs or civic associations that have a lot of pull, and it seems like these civic associations have pull with higher elected officials, okay, that can stir up a little bit more to police these areas, okay, and assist us in what we're doing, but that's forthcoming, okay. It's already in the pipeline to make it happen, okay.
Okay, if there's not anything from anybody else, thank you, Chief Harris.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
And Ms. Ojo, last but not least.
Okay, thank you.
2 more, I'm sorry.
Okay, we do have one more, and that is Mr. Barber. Thank you patiently.
We have 2 more.
The city clerk.
So, we have Mr. Barber that's coming up next. Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
My report is in board docs. For the month of March, we've been having a lot of rainfall, so the guys have been real busy focusing on the drains in the city. We've been doing weekly and daily inspections. We've been having a lot of issues with the Pepco power lines, so we got some spreadsheets made. Currently, there's 2 power lines on Gregg Street that's leaning real bad. It was reported today, and Pepco told us that they'll be out this week to handle the power lines. The street signs, we tried to put them up earlier today. It's going to be a little bit more issues than what I thought. Majority of the signs, not all of them, they was put in the ground with concrete. So the guys got to dig it out, pull the signs up, and then fill the hose back up, and then put the signs back in. The portable bathroom was vacuumed and cleaned for See Pleasant Day. We ordered some fire cabinets so that we can store our gas safely. And all vehicles right now are currently being rotated in and out the shops for inspections and permits. The Knox fireboxes was installed for City Hall and the EJD building. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Are there any questions for Mr. Barber? Councilmember Higgs?
Good evening. Thank you for your report. Have the tree trimming been completed with those trees hanging over into the wires, utility wires on the streets? Have they completed that?
Yeah, majority of the tree trimming was finished. I noticed that we still have NDC that was they're still doing their trimming on and off.
Okay. I've seen some over in Ward 1 that hasn't been touched at all. I saw them on one street, but they didn't go to the top part of the street. They just did like the bottom half, closer to James Farmer Way.
And they're touching the power lines? Mm-hmm. Okay, I can assess that tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor Porter?
Yeah, our street sweeping program is really functioning the way it should, and I thought we were going to also address the fact that we have the street sweepers out there to really look at the streets themselves, because we have to look at how we're going to go about improving the streets and strategically what streets are first or whatever the case may be. But we really have some streets that are really they're needing some work. You can see the division lines going down the streets and cracking up and so forth in certain areas. So if we have that, to put together a kind of report so they can go to the appropriate people so we can see what kind of funding sources we need to address these streets.
Yeah, some of the street signs we have reported, the issue with some of like the sidewalk in front of McDonald's that buckled. When we called, they say they got to 2025 to fix that. So.
That's something that has to be reviewed through an engineering process, so, yeah, okay.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Barber? Well, Mr. Barber, I will see you on Friday at noon.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, our city clerk.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Ms. Ojo. So, of course, as you know, my report is in board docs. In the month of March, we opened up for the 24 election. So candidate packets have been prepared and placed on the website. I also engaged with a company to have the documents translated from English to Spanish. So there's one more document that's coming in, and then those documents will also be placed on the website. So, as well as printed here in Spanish for any, candidate that may be interested in receiving a packet in Spanish. So, that is for the 2024 election, which is in September 9th. Also, prepared the 2023 financial disclosure statements. That is part of the packet, but also due before the packet for current elected officials and department managers. That packet was put out today to each person to pick up. It was sent electronically, and I also have I put hard copies on the dais for the council. So during the month of March, of course, the city clerk prepared the legislation that was approved by the council. Meeting minutes was approved by the city council, and let me see if there's anything else. The city clerk also will be working with the city manager and department heads to review the current records retention schedule so that we can have that schedule revised. Our current schedule does not include electronic copies of documents, so we want to make certain that is included. So those meetings will be pending for this month with the departments. Once that is complete, then I will submit the documentations over to, so the current schedule may list for administration one sheet that has several documents. the next records retention schedule, which is approved by the state, it will have, each document will have its own schedule. So that's the new, so it's a longer process, but at least you're able to include electronic, documents. Right now, we do not have that on our schedule. So, that is the next thing to do. The meeting minutes, of course, is being transitioned back into binders, for the city clerk department. What else? Okay, I think that's it, not unless there's any questions for myself.
Thank you, Ms. Ball. Are there any questions for Ms. Ball? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Ball. And we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is council committee reports. It is my understanding that there were no committee meetings during March, so we will skip that and go to citizen comments, 4-1. Ms. Ball, any comments from the citizens?
So we do not have any citizens online, and I did not receive any written comments for the city for this month.
Okay, thank you very much. Legislation 5.1, there is none. Number 6, unfinished business. 6.1, consideration of consent agenda. This is Ms. Ojo and Ms. Ball.
Oh, okay, then. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. This is in consideration of a discussion that we had regarding streamlining some of the processes with the council and their meetings, and to make a recommendation on a consent agenda. Ms. Ball and I put together, mainly Ms. Ball, this item, and she will address with you basically why and how a consent agenda could assist the flow of the city council meetings. So I will turn it over to you, Ms. Ball.
So on page 2 of the presentation, it deals with, it starts off with what is a consent agenda. So it's kind of giving an explanation. A consent agenda is a bundle of items that will be voted on without discussion as a package. So some of those items include, items that are commonly found are minutes from the previous council meeting, confirmation of a decision that has been discussed previously, mayor and council president's reports, city manager and departmental reports, finance reports, committee reports, committee appointments, updated organizational documents, and just basic routine items. Those are the items that are typically found on the consent agenda. Robert's Rules of Order, which is the parliamentary procedure that the city had adopted. So the current edition, the 12th edition, they refer to it as consent calendar. So with a consent agenda, even if there is a report that is listed on the agenda that you would want to pull, you can pull items from the consent agenda. So it doesn't automatically stay there, whether it is meeting minutes, if there is a recommendation. So you would have to do those things in advance. You could send an email that say, I want to pull this off, I want to have this discussion, you know, in reference to this particular item that is listed in the report, or if there is a recommendation for amendments in the minutes or corrections in the minutes, you send it over, and then of course those corrections will need to be made, okay, prior to. So it's not, the consent agenda is not a way to eliminate the process, it's just to streamline your processes. So tonight, for example, we started with the presentation of the departments at about 7 o'clock. It's now 8:13. So it will streamline those processes so you wouldn't be in a meeting for an extended period of time. So the next one, why should you consider? I just kind of, consent agendas removes one of the obstacles with limited time and allows the council to engage meaningfully and provide better governance. The meeting time may be reduced, asks the why, and it provides more substantive review of information. So it gives you that opportunity to have that. Secondly, on page 5, Keys to effectively using the consent agenda, provide access to the documents at least 5 days in advance. The agenda typically comes out 1 week before, so you will have that opportunity to review. As Ms. Ojo and I had discussed, it's also gonna put a deadline, a tight deadline internally to ensure departmental reports are presented on time. Anything that has to go before the council, if it's going to be on the consent agenda or not, it should be prepared in advance so that you all will have the opportunity to do your due diligence. So encourage you all to read to get familiar with the materials. This is not saying that you're not, but this is just one of the processes. Utilize the 5-day period to ask clarifying questions as needed. Remove any items, as I stated, from the consent agenda that warrants discussion during the meeting. So it's not just because it's there, it stays there. That's not the case. On page 6, it says during the meeting, so kind of give you like a little picture of what will happen. So you will still have your standard opening, your roll call, invocation and pledge, approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. And the consent agenda, it lists the different items there under 2. So as you see, it will say A, approval of, and I just use this as an example, February meetings minutes, mayor report, council president report, city manager report, departmental reports, council committee reports. Usually those items are approved by a motion at one time. So you wouldn't have to go through and do individual approval of. If there's questions, you can ask those questions in advance prior to the meeting. On page 7, during the meeting, the agenda is set by the council president. All reports are submitted 1 week before. Agenda is sent to the elected officials. Elected officials receive the agenda 5 days in advance. Elected officials review agenda in advance of the meeting. Consent agendas is introduced at the meeting. If requested, an item or items are removed from the consent agenda. Approve the consent agenda, usually a unanimous consent. Any disagreement should have been expressed by removing an item. Document acceptance in the minutes. So determining items for consent agenda. So when you determine items for the consent agenda, to determine whether an item should be placed on the consent agenda, ask, is this item self-explanatory or uncontroversial, okay? Or does it contain an issue that warrants council discussion? Is this item for information only, or is it needed for another meeting agenda issue? Do we need to confirm a previously discussed issue, or do we need to continue the discussion? Number 10 is you need a discussion. If you disagree with an item or believe an item requires discussion, request to remove that one item from the consent agenda. This is done at the council meeting. Prior notification to the council president is helpful but not required, okay? Sample agenda is on number 11, so it gives you, I took like a little picture of, not really a picture, but typed in if it was tonight's agenda. So it would have been your opening, then your consent would have been with, I didn't skip my page. All of the items that was there, so your, it was not meeting minutes tonight, but mayor report, council president is next week. City manager report, departmental reports, and if there was any committee reports. Those would have been the items that would have been listed under the consent agenda. So you could have accepted them and then everyone could have gone. If there was questions, those questions should have been asked in advance.
Yes, Ms. Ball, let me just jump in here. So this is our work session, and this is the session where we do all of the work of the council, and we ask all the questions, and of course, you have all the reports that are there. So say, for instance, we're going into the next meeting, which is going to be held next week. You've already gotten all the information and all the clarifying information for the most part from that meeting, from this meeting. But of course, you could move into it where you would go into the consent agenda and you could bypass all the reports from the mayor, the council, the committees, anything that you wanted to take out. And of course, anything that you didn't want to take out, you could just bring it out and it becomes an action item on the agenda. So it just moves it real smoothly, so, you know, you all can move toward the true business of what you want to discuss and ask the meatier questions without feeling that there's a time constraint.
So, page page 12 gives a scenario for removing the item, similar to what we do, not similar, it's basically the same what we do now. Council President notes the items on the consent agenda and asks if any member wish to remove an item. So this is before you move for the approval. Councilmember A, and just is just using, for example, I didn't want to put anyone's name here. So Councilmember A, I would like to request that item D be removed from the consent agenda for discussion. Council President notes removal and asks for a motion and second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda minus item D signify by saying aye. So that's the process to remove the item from the consent agenda. 13, frequently asked questions. For consent agenda, abstaining from a vote. If a council member needs to abstain from voting on a particular item in the consent agenda, she or he can make this explicit ahead of time and the items need not be removed. Correction to the minutes, questions and corrections should be done ahead of time. Information corrections can then be sent to the full council and the minutes can remain on the consent agenda. 14 talks about next steps. The next steps will be for the council to consider approving the consent agenda. We can create a cheat sheet on how a consent agenda works. We can schedule a virtual mock meeting using a consent agenda. Outline criteria for what can and what cannot be included on the consent agenda. Ease into the process with obvious, clear items on the consent agenda. Ask the elected body how the new structure is working, fine-tune meetings and materials as necessary. And that completes the presentation on consent agenda. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Ball. Yeah. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Mayor Porter.
The only question I have, Ms. Ball, is if you're going to do a report, let's say, for example, the mayor's report, all right? The only thing, this is fine with me to streamline it and so forth, in reference to that, it's already there, it's written out, people can see it. The only thing that I would be saying is just something I wanted to bring to the attention of the council, in this case here, in transparency. That's the only thing I would be wanting to do. Now, if the council says, well, I'm only approving XX so-and-so, whatever the case may be, how would I then be able to bring out some point that I'd like to make? And that's the only concern that I would have, okay, because they're approving that I can't say one or the other and so forth. I wouldn't be able to bring out the point that I want to bring out. So that's the only concern I have with it. Other than that, I'm fine with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be on there. So
Yeah,
I think
typically the mayor's report is not, I've seen it where it's not a part of the initial consent agenda, because they always typically give the reports.
Right. So it's up to the council. The council to basically state the items that you want listed under the consent agenda. For example, as Ms. Ojo said and the mayor pointed out, that he may want to highlight something. So you could say, well, no, I don't want the council president, I don't want the mayor's report or the council president report on the consent agenda. We want them to present their report to the constituents, right? Because really that's who they're presenting to. They're presenting to the constituents. So that is a discussion or decision that the council makes as to what items will go on under the consent agenda.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Ball on this? Okay, thank you, Ms. Ball. And we will move to the next matter on the agenda, 6.2, Council Committee Description Recommendations. Ms. Ojo and, Ms. Ojo?
Yes, so
I'm
we've
sorry,
been,
I'm sorry.
Are we gonna discuss this, or we just gonna hear the presentation and go? You said you requested it, so that's what I just wanna know, like, but we didn't say we're gonna do it or not, that's what I'm saying. Are we gonna consider this, or not?
It is the opinion of the acting chair. We got the presentation, and if we want to go to the next step, we can facilitate that, but we just got the presentation tonight.
Okay. You had any questions?
oh, okay.
No, I didn't have a question, I just wanted to make it we gonna vote on it? Yeah, we gonna vote on it or not, that's what I wanted to know,
Oh, okay, then. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our next presentation is regarding council committees. I had made a recommendation that we utilize the opportunity to create some descriptions for each of the committees. If you look in our codes, you will see that there is a description for one department, which is the Environmental Justice Department. That was done when there was a name change that was being presented from being Public Works to Environmental Justice. And so but that is the only one that is listed. So Ms. Ball had began the process, and I had worked alongside her to look at the council committee descriptions, and we have made recommendations regarding how we should approach creating those descriptions that identifies the committee. One of the things that you will see that is around ongoing theme in all of them is that we refer to each of the committees as meeting with the city department heads. And the reason why is because oftentimes there's a cross between which department heads may be at a council meeting. So we may have a meeting on human services, health, education, human services and health. And typically we may believe it belongs to one department, but it may actually cross 2 or 3 over. So the recommendation is that whatever department heads that you need at the meeting, just based on what the subject matter is, that they will be there. But that's the ongoing theme throughout all of these council meetings. But I believe that these descriptions would be favorable to you all. So we'll open it up for discussion. I'll open it up before I do that to Ms. Ball if she has any additional thing that she may want to add to this.
No, I do not, I believe.
Oh, okay then. So basically, we'll start with economic planning, development, and housing. The description reads, the committee shall work in conjunction with the city manager and the city department heads with regards to all regulations, codes, programs, funds, grants, community advisory boards, and commissions and initiatives dealing with development in the city's revitalization, implementation of smart growth plans, affordable housing, business, annexation plans for future growth. Human Services, Health and Education Committee reads, the committee shall work in conjunction with the city manager and the city department heads pertaining to regulation, legislative matters affecting public health, enforcement of city code, monitor issues affecting the general public. Environmental justice and transportation, the committee shall work in conjunction with the city manager and the department heads with jurisdiction over sanitation, public works, projects, sewers, streets, trash and recycle collections, parks, disposition of surplus property, fleet management, facilities maintenance of all city-owned properties, the inventory of city property, snow removal, and leaves collection. Then we have Public Safety Committee. The committee shall work in conjunction with the city manager and the city department heads with regard to emergency management response, regulations and authorities of legislation and matters pertaining to safety of the general public. We have the Finance and Budget Committee. The committee shall review and consider all budgetary considerations on behalf of the city that may include the city budget and investments and others that matter and other that matters that may impact the city's financial position. And then finally, the Government Affairs and Technology Committee. The committee shall work in conjunction with the city manager and the city department heads on matters pertaining to policy and oversight, governance of the city and information technology. The committee shall be responsible for reviewing any administrative policies, recommendations, or changes, and matters that are recommended to the committee pertaining to government affairs. So those are the county, those are the council committee descriptions for the 6 standing committees. So I don't have anything else, but we just wanted to present it to you so you can make a recommendation to adopt it.
Well,
Moving.
yeah, so if the council agrees to, we would have to amend the code. We would have to amend that section. of
Yes,
the code.
it would become part of the code. And it would be the section where it identifies the council committees. So it is a code change.
Okay, I have a question, but, go ahead, Mayor Porter.
Now, I'm just understanding as far as any, normally when you do that is whether or not there was any differences in what previously, what it was before, the description for it. And normally they take in what's been taken out, what's been added, whether it can be for the change that's been made. So has there been any major changes to the description of the various committees?
You actually didn't have any. So the only one that you have was the Environmental Justice and Transportation Committee. So that one was changed because it went, in the code, it went from Public Works, it was actually a name change. So it went from Public Works to Environmental Justice. Yeah, so the change is just adding the additional verbiage to it. And the description's the same, basically.
Okay, are there any other,
They don't exist.
any other questions? Along the lines with my colleagues, Councilmember Higgs is concerned in terms of the consent agenda. We are taking the presentation, and as we move forward at another time, we will take up this matter at another time. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think that we should consider for the finance committee, that audits be considered, part of its function, because the audit is under the city council. And so I think we should have the ability to be informed about what's happening with the audits and things of that sort as a function of that committee. Because it is our responsibility. It is under our budget. It is our responsibility. I think that needs to be added to the budget and finance. I think the rest of them are, they're okay. But I think, in my opinion, that's something that needs to be added.
Thank you, Councilmember McCarthy. Are there any other concerns on this? Okay, thank you, Ms. Ojo. Thank you, Ms. Ball. Moving to item number 7, new business. 7.1, citizen comment response time consideration. Ms. Ojo and Ms. Ball, or Ms. Ojo.
Actually, I think the council requested for this to be put on the agenda, last week. Councilmember Bilbro,
Okay, Councilmember Bilbro.
during the public session, you wanted the change opposed to having the citizens be responded to in writing.
Yes. So with that, I just want to kind of retouch on the topic. We have a lot of citizens. Not everybody is concerned, but we do have active citizens who come to our meetings, who watch our meetings. Councilwoman McCarthy and I were just looking at like the Facebook, right? Like that was being recorded. There were people watching. So they have questions, they have concerns, they have things that they want to know about. And if they take the time out of their schedule, like we have to come to the meeting, and we have our department heads, we have our city manager here, we have our city clerk here, and they want to get an answer, we should be able to allow those leaders to give that answer at the time they ask, and then still have it recorded, still be put on the website, the answer to it. But if they have an answer, we should give it to them, because we've already, I'm sure more than just myself, have received complaints about, I went to a meeting, I asked a question, I haven't gotten an answer, I wanted to know today so I can go back to my neighbors and give them the answer, right? Because a lot of issues that are being brought to us are not just an issue for that one resident. It's for their street, it's for their area, it's for, for their ward. So I do want us to be able to consider allowing the leaders to give an answer at that time so that they don't walk out empty-handed. If there were, we had citizens here tonight, right? And it's like they had to walk out because it was probably taking too long for them to get to this section for citizen comment. But if they had stayed, that means they would have stayed for like 2 hours just to be able to say something for 35 seconds. And then we tell them we can't give them an answer. It just doesn't seem fair. You know, they could be cooking dinner, they could be playing with their kids, whatever, and we're letting them walk out empty-handed. So I would like for us to consider them to get an answer when they ask.
Thank you, thank you, Councilmember Bilbro. Councilmember Love.
In answer to you, Mr. Silver, I think we would need to stay on top of, because some questions are not going to be able to be answered right then.
Yes.
So you don't want to give out incorrect answers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? In haste to say, well, let me answer, and not be sure that the answer is correct.
Right.
So we're gonna have to distinguish on which answers that we can do, so we don't cause confusion.
And to that point, though, and I do agree that we need to do that, but there's some answers that are a little more simple, right, and some that are a little more complicated. For the complex answers, and we leave that up to the discretion of our leaders, who we have entrusted to lead those departments, right? We say, hey, they say, hey, let me get some research on that and then get back to you, right? But if it's a simpler question, you know, hey, do we have a noise ordinance? I'm sure Chief Harris would know, yes, there's a noise ordinance, you can't do something after 11, whatever, right? If there were other things that they had questions of, I can give you this answer and I can get the rest to you later, or I can give you that entire answer later, but we should still allow, if they can give that answer, right, with complete certainty that it is the truth and it is accurate, let them have the answer, right? Like, waiting and going back home empty-handed just doesn't seem fair to them. So that's all. I mean, I completely agree. If it's a complex answer, don't just say something willy-nilly. But the simpler answers, let them get the answer.
We only used to do that at the second meeting too, where they could talk, or they could answer that. Now I see we do that at the first meeting and the second meeting.
Yeah.
Because the charter says
This says that every meeting is closed.
are allowed at any public meeting.
Yeah.
Whether
Ask
that,
questions.
any public meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So we weren't following the charter.
Yeah.
Mayor Porter, you
I
want to
think
say
that's a
something?
part, yeah, I think that's a part of when you're talking about going to the consent agenda, okay, to speed things along and so forth. It maybe also, there's a possibility, if you all want to look at, on specific meetings, like this one in specific, to change the order, perhaps, okay, of the citizen comments to, before all these reports and so forth. Then you have, you know, that might be something for you to consider.
I think that's a great idea.
We used to do it first, remember?
And people complained about that.
It's always going to be
People
a
gonna complain about
possibility.
everything.
But those two people might have had
But
legitimate things.
the reason why I say that is because we did that because we thought perhaps some of the questions would be answered because the reports were coming and maybe their concerns would be answered. We know that's not necessarily happening in this case here. And we do have people that come here and they are sitting for a period of time and they may not want to sit all that period of time since we're doing this. And I just think, you know, in this particular one, it might be a change of order.
That's a great idea.
Well, let me just say that in future consideration of this, we should definitely consider this in the future. I remember coming to meetings about 12 years ago when Mayor Porter and Councilmember Rayner and Councilmember Higgs's father was on the council. And whenever a resident would speak out about something, the president of the council at that time, who was a Ward 1 representative, just said automatically, like a robot, go talk to the city manager. Next, go talk to the city manager. That's all I have to say about that. Does anybody else? Yep. Thank you very much, Councilmember Bilbro. Okay, we will take this up in further consideration. 7.2, the Learning Organization for Seat Pleasant Contract Consideration. Ms. Ojo.
that I have to discuss the official request for proposal to move forward with the Learning Seat Pleasant concept. I have provided you all with an RFP, a request for proposal, that will identify a particular individual should you all, or a firm should you all decide to go in this direction, to really look at Learning Seat Pleasant and to work with us in a contracting capacity. This here is designed really to assist us in finding a human resources firm, a professional firm that works with organizations like us that can look at every aspect of what we do within our organization and get us on track to where we need to be, not only in our human resources department, but also in training. This organization is at a critical, they're at a critical junction when you do not have training available for your employees. It's a safety risk if they're not trained properly on the equipment that they're using. It also makes us liable if an employee is not trained in a certain aspect, such as on civil rights, equal employment, the Americans with Disabilities Act, HIPAA, all the things, I can just name it, going on and on and on. So although this information is provided for us in the personnel manual, the manual is this thick. And most employees are not able to look through it and be able to decipher the information that they need. So typically when you're working with employees that are non-HR function, they wouldn't know how to guide through our personnel manual. So the Learning Seat Pleasant is a way to develop a level of transparency for all of our employees that goes not just beyond what we're doing at the organization, but also training them on the competencies that they are designed to work with throughout our organization, and also on the other end makes us accountable to assure that our employees have access to the information. So in previous discussions, I've talked to you all about an intranet page. That is at the forefront of where we're going. I believe I can continue to work with Peak Technologies to have them provide an intranet page where they'll be able to go to the Human Resources Department, get information on benefits, get information on any training opportunities that they have, get information on if they need to have a short-term disability or long-term disability, or even information on their retirement plan. But this proposal here is designed to just do the full wraparound of centering our organization around learning and building competencies. And this proposal basically would allow for a highly experienced human resource professional to come in to do the following. Number one, I would like for someone to come in to conduct a human resources audit to assess the current needs of the department that we're in right now. That is critical, because although we have all of these functions listed in our manual, we want to see how they're working and how they actually flow out to our employees through a level of transparency. The second is to develop an official onboarding process, and this is in no particular order. But of course, I envision this organization being that when you come here and begin working within our organization, that within the first 90 days, you have been provided with all the information that you need to move forward. You would have your mandatory training. You would actually have, you will be onboarding with your mandatory training. That would include all the training that I had mentioned earlier, and you'd also have a schedule of the classes that you would have to take within the time frame that you are there so that you can perform your duties. The third thing is to work with each department. This consultant will work with each department to identify what classes are necessary for their department to thrive. The fourth thing is they would create a database to begin to identify by each department and each city position what types of trainings that they desire and help us coordinate that. The sixth thing is that they will create a process to capture training experiences for each employee. The second part of this is to have a learning management system where we're able to capture all the trainings and have some type of portal where we can capture the trainings for all the employees, and also even have online trainings available for them as well. It would also help organize our HR department's processes so that there's a level of transparency for not only our learning experiences, but the services that we offer in the HR department. I would like them to also provide us with a job satisfaction survey so that we have a general understanding of of how people are within our organization and what they feel about the job that they're doing. And also, finally, to develop a motivational and rewards program so that employees are recognized for the good work that they do for Seat Pleasant and to motivate them to move forward. So basically, this is what we're looking for our consultant to do. And that consultant would work directly hand in hand with me and the HR manager. And I noticed, and I know that Ms. Barber mentioned earlier about the operations manager position that she had requested. And just so you know, just for clarity purposes, the police department, this is on a totally different subject, but the police department has typically been handling all of our IT stuff. And so they asked if they could fully, take over all of our computers and IT. So typically when an employee comes into the organization, they go to the police department to get the badge. They get all their access there. They get their phones there. So they should be able to get their phones, their computers there also. So there's one of the officers there that would be assisting us with that. So that's why my recommendation is that we have an HR generalist position as opposed to an operations person. So that shouldn't really come out of the HR department. Really want to just focus on the HR functions of it. But anyway, with this RFP, it would provide us additionally with availability for resources, access to SharePoint website, and offer opportunities for all of our employees to access team folders. It also provides a sense of belonging because employees will actually be able to look on this intranet site that I'm working on with Peak and have a level of transparency because they'll be able to understand the various operations of all of our departments. We do a really good job at the city, at least on the senior staff side, and meeting and coordinating with each other and trying to promote an environment where there's collaboration amongst departments and that we're partnering. And with our senior staff meetings, we're able to know what's going on in each of the departments. Our employees, for the most part, don't have that. Once they come to work, they're working in waste management. They don't hardly know what they're doing in DPW. Our police department, they may be working the street, but they don't really understand what's going on in the city clerk's office. So, we want to make sure that our organization is fully understood by everyone that is here. So I am just requesting now for the council's permission to move forward to put this RFP on the street. And again, I had mentioned earlier that we're looking at roughly about a 6-month turnaround once we get someone in. So, and I'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Ojo. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you
Ms.
very
Ojo.
much.
We will consider this at a later time.
Thank you.
And 7.3, consideration for a commercial collection bin ban for Seat Pleasant. Ms. Ojo.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vice President Wright. So, I wish that Environmental Justice and the Police Department was here, but we have been noticing considerably a number of clothing donation bins that are in the city. So with the clothing donation bins that pop up, every bin in the city must have a permit. Most of these do not. But what also comes with the bins is not only the fact that they're eyesores and they're listed, they're areas, but they're also areas for illegal dumps. So it gives people the opportunity to dump items near the areas, thinking that someone is going to pick it up. So I am recommending for the council to make a consideration on either permitting these or limiting these, or really just banning these clothing donation places in the city of Seat Pleasant. And that would be done through an ordinance. And the purpose of it really is because it really does cost the city quite a bit of money, because we're often the times picking up the illegal dumps when people are dumping near those sites. And they really have no purpose in the city, and it serves no purpose for the public for them to be there. So just ask for your consideration to move forward on an ordinance to ban them in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ojo. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much. And now we are at announcements. Councilmember Bilbro.
Thank you. 8.1, proposed budget hearing for fiscal year 2024-2025, Monday, April 8th, 2024. Seat Pleasant City Hall, Council Chambers, 6301 Addison Road, Seat Pleasant, Maryland, 20743. Hybrid and by Zoom video at 6 p.m. Meeting link details will be on the city's website. 8.2, public session, Monday, April 8th, 2024, Seat Pleasant City Hall, Council Chambers, 6301 Addison Road, Seat Pleasant. That will be at 7 p.m. Meeting link details will be on the city's website. 8.3, proposed budget hearing for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. Saturday, April 13th, 2024, the Seat Pleasant City Hall, Council Chambers. That will be a hybrid and by Zoom video from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Meeting link details will be on the city's website. Annual Seat Pleasant.
It should say Annual Seat Pleasant Day.
Annual Seat Pleasant Day, Saturday, May 4th, 2024. A 4K run, grab your running shoes. And dog parade, grab your puppies. At 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Goodwin Park activities from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. 8.5, regular work session, Monday, May 6th, 2024, Seat Pleasant City Hall, Council Chambers, right here. Meeting, that will be at 6 p.m., hybrid and by Zoom video. Meeting link details will be on the city's website. 8.6, public session, Monday, May 13th, 2024, hybrid and by Zoom webinar at 7 p.m. Meeting link details are available on the city's website, and that will be here at 6301 Addison Road, Seat Pleasant, Maryland.
Thank you, Councilmember Bilbro. And if there is no further business, I adjourn this meeting at 8:53 p.m. Adjourn.
Thank you, sir.
God bless us. God bless America.